This is Land of Havilah, Jeremiah 22, verse 1. Yahweh said, "Go down to the house of the king of Judah and speak this word there." Comment in verse 1, Yahweh told Jeremiah to go to the king's palace and speak this prophecy. The king turns out to be Jehoiakim. His biography is in 2 Kings, 2 Chronicles, Daniel, and Jeremiah. About 609 BC, Pharaoh of Egypt defeated and subjugated Judah and installed Jehoiakim as king. So he was a vassal of Pharaoh from the beginning. After 4 years, Nebuchadnezzar defeated Pharaoh. This made Jehoiakim independent. But almost immediately, Nebuchadnezzar showed up at Jerusalem and set siege, Daniel 1:1. Apparently, Jehoiakim decided to surrender quickly because the description of the siege is very benign. He agreed to serve Nebuchadnezzar. 3 years later, he rebelled from Nebuchadnezzar, is the wording of it. Not that he went to war with Nebuchadnezzar, probably just he stopped paying tribute. Jeremiah gives the general impression that he was emboldened by false prophecy that Yahweh would support him. Or since he wasn't much of a believer in Yahweh, he thought the gods in general would support him. Nebuchadnezzar didn't retaliate immediately, but eventually in 597 he set siege to Jerusalem again. The city rebelled against Jehoiakim, dragged him out of the city, and handed him over to Nebuchadnezzar. This was the end of Jehoiakim's 11-year reign. He didn't listen to Jeremiah's prophecies that would have preserved him. So as it was, Nebuchadnezzar took him to Babylon in fetters, where he eventually died. Whether he died by execution or natural causes, we don't know. Jeremiah prophesied his burial would resemble a donkey's burial, which means it would be perfunctory, with nothing to honor him and no one to lament him. Jeremiah 22:18 and 19. Jeremiah should say this to him, verse 1. "Hear Yahweh's word, King of Judah, who sits on David's throne, you, your servants, and your people who enter in by these gates." Comment, Yahweh addresses this prophecy to the king and all his servants, which is his administration and government, verse 3. Yahweh says, "Execute justice and righteousness, and deliver him who's robbed out of the hand of the oppressor. Do no wrong, do no violence to the foreigner, the fatherless, or the widow. Don't shed innocent blood in this place." Comment in verse 3, execute basic justice, Yahweh says. Verse 4, "For if you do this thing indeed, then kings sitting on David's throne will enter in by the gates of this house, riding in chariots and on horses, he, his servants, and his people. But if you'll not hear these words, I swear by myself, says Yahweh, that this house will become a desolation." Comment, every king since David has been descended from David. Other than one short interruption, the house of David has been on the throne for 400 years. This is the throne of David. In verses 4 and 5, if Jehoiakim will execute justice, Yahweh will preserve the house of David on the throne. Jehoiakim and his posterity will continue to live royally, riding chariots and horses. But if he won't listen, Yahweh will wipe out the house of David. Verse 6. For Yahweh says concerning the house of the king of Judah, "You are Gilead to me, the head of Lebanon, yet surely I'll make you a wilderness, cities which are not inhabited." Comment in verse 6, the point of Yahweh mentioning Gilead and Lebanon is that they're known for high mountains. Yahweh holds the house of David in high esteem, like those mountains, but he won't hesitate to desolate the house of David if he has to. Verse 7, "I'll prepare destroyers against you, everyone with his weapons, and they'll cut down your choice cedars and cast them into the fire." Comment in verse 7, cedar had to be imported from Lebanon. Cedar posts and paneling were wildly expensive status symbols. If Jehoiakim doesn't reform, Yahweh will send destroyers with weapons who'll cut down the cedar posts of his house, which means his house will collapse. The post will be cast into the fire. It's literal that invaders will destroy his palace, and it's also symbolic that the house of David will be destroyed. Verse 8, "Many nations will pass by this city, and they'll each ask his neighbor, 'Why has Yahweh done this to this great city?' Then they'll answer, 'Because they abandoned the covenant of Yahweh their God, worshipped other gods, and served them.'" Comment in verses 8 and 9, foreigners will pass by Jerusalem and say, "Can you believe this destruction?" It's all because they abandon Yahweh. Yahweh goes on warning Jehoiakim, verse 10. Don't weep for the dead, don't bemoan him, but weep bitterly for him who goes away, for he'll return no more and not see his native country. For Yahweh says, touching Shallum, the son of Josiah, king of Judah, who reigned instead of Josiah his father, and who went out of this place, he won't return there any more, but he'll die in the place where they've led him captive. He'll see this land no more. Comment, Shallum is also known as Jehoahaz in the Bible. He's Jehoiakim's brother. He reigned in place of his father Josiah, but only for 3 months. Pharaoh Necho removed him and installed Jehoiakim. 1 Chronicles 3:15, 2 Kings 23:30-34, 2 Chronicles 36, 1-4, and Jeremiah 22:11. In verses 11 and 12, Shallum is still captive in Egypt. Yahweh says he'll die there. He'll see Judah no more. Jehoiakim should be asking himself whether he wants to listen to Yahweh or end up a captive like his brother. It'll be one or the other. In verses 10-12, Yahweh tells Jehoiakim, in effect, don't mourn those who die in the coming invasion. Death is the easy way out. Captivity is the thing to mourn about. Don't let it happen to you. Furthermore, Yahweh says, verse 13, Woe to him who builds his house by unrighteousness and his rooms by injustice, who uses his neighbor's service without wages and doesn't give him his hire, who says, I'll build myself a wide house and spacious rooms, and cuts out windows for himself with a cedar ceiling and painted with red. Comment in verses 13 and 14, Woe to anyone like Jehoiakim who builds his house by unrighteousness, injustice, and by withholding wages for the sake of getting rich and having all sorts of useless luxuries. So you have cedar paneling on the ceiling painted red. Whoop-de-doo. Does that really do anything for you? Verse 15. Should you reign because you strive to excel in cedar? Comment, Yahweh says, Is luxury what makes a king? Still in verse 15. Didn't your father eat and drink and do justice and righteousness? Then it was well with him. He judged the cause of the poor and needy, so it was well then. Wasn't this to know me? Says Yahweh. Comment in verses 15 and 16, Didn't your father eat and drink and do justice and righteousness? Meaning, didn't your father do the right thing and still have what he needed? In verse 16, your father did right by the poor and needy. Then wasn't this to know me, which means, isn't that what it is to know me? Verse 17, But your eyes and your heart are only for your covetousness, for shedding innocent blood, for oppression, and for doing violence. Comment in verse 17, Jehoiakim, your heart is inclined to evil. Therefore, concerning you, verse 18. Therefore, Yahweh says concerning Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah, they won't lament for him, saying, Ah, my brother, or Ah, sister. They won't lament for him, saying, Ah, Lord, or Ah, his glory. He'll be buried with the burial of a donkey, drawn and cast out beyond the gates of Jerusalem. Comment in verses 18-19, when Jehoiakim is gone, no one will mourn about it. He won't even be lamented within the family. He'll be cast out beyond the gates of Jerusalem, which means the city will drag him out and hand him over to Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar will bind him in fetters and transport him to Babylon, 2 Chronicles 36:6. He'll die there, and in verse 19, he'll receive a burial fit for a donkey. Verse 20. Go up to Lebanon and cry, lift up your voice in Bashan, and cry for Abarim, for all your lovers have been destroyed. Comment, Lebanon, Bashan, and Abarim are neighboring regions. Yahweh sarcastically calls them Jehoiakim's lovers. Apparently he's close to them diplomatically. It's a love affair that won't work out because Nebuchadnezzar will destroy them as well. Jehoiakim should be having a love affair with Yahweh. Yahweh could actually help him. Verse 20. I spoke to you in your prosperity, but you said, I will not listen. This has been your way from your youth, that you didn't obey my voice. Comment in verse 21, Jehoiakim, you've never been one to listen to me. Verse 22. The wind will feed all your shepherds, and your lovers will go into captivity. Surely then you'll be ashamed and confounded for all your wickedness. Comment in verse 22, the wind will feed all your shepherds, which means his advisors will be full of hot air. His lovers in verse 22 are his foreign allies. He's got a bromance going with them. They'll go into captivity. His help will evaporate, and he won't know what to do. Verse 23. Inhabitant of Lebanon, who makes your nest in the cedars, how greatly to be pitied you'll be when pangs come on you, the pain as of a woman in travail. Comment, an inhabitant of Lebanon who makes his nest in the cedars is a proud person. It'll be a pitiful sight to see Jehoiakim and all his proud advisors fall from that lofty pride and be distressed as a woman in childbirth. Verse 24. As I live, says Yahweh, though Coniah the son of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, were the signet on my right hand, yet would I pluck you from there. I'd give you into the hand of those who seek your life, and into the hand of them of whom you're afraid, even into the hand of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and into the hand of the Chaldeans. Comment according to verse 24, Coniah is Jehoiakim's son. Even if Yahweh had a very high regard for Coniah, he would still pluck Jehoiakim out of Judah and give him to Nebuchadnezzar. The Chaldeans in verse 25 are an ethnic group. Babylon is only the name of their city. Chaldean is their ethnicity. Verse 26. I'll cast you out with your mother who bore you into another country where you were not born, and there you'll die. But to the land to which their soul longs to return, there they will not return. Comment in verse 26, Jehoiakim's mother will be taken to Babylon as well. Does he really want to keep doing what he's doing and see that? Both of them will die there. In verse 27, they'll live out their days longing for Judah and will never see it again. Now concerning his son Coniah, verse 28. Is this man Coniah a despised, broken vessel? Is he a vessel in which no one delights? Why are they cast out, he and his offspring, and cast into a land which they don't know? Comment in verse 8, What, Jehoiakim, do you hate your son? Either listen to Yahweh, or Coniah and his children will be taken to Babylon as well. Now Yahweh pleads, verse 29, O earth, 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 hear Yahweh's word. Yahweh says, Record this man as childless, a man who will not prosper in his days, for no more will a man of his offspring prosper, sitting on David's throne and ruling in Judah. Comment, Jehoiakim will be childless in the sense that none of his offspring will sit on the throne. It's been 20 consecutive generations of the house of David on the throne. If Jehoiakim doesn't listen, he'll be that one king who failed to pass the throne on to the next generation. Jeremiah 23 is next.